Hey there, everybody. Week 3, can you believe it? We're here already, almost halfway through, sort of. I am recording in my third different location, same state, still in Michigan, hanging out with my parents, trying to find a quiet place away from my own children and my two nephews to record. So hopefully there's not a ton of interference during the course of this video, but if you hear anything, anyone yelling, just ignore that. So we are now talking about actually starting to think about page design. So you worked your way through that sort of designer's worksheet the first week, and you have that graphics notebook from second week. Now we're actually starting to use grids to create story packages. So that's the plan for this week. So there's a couple things to share with you. If you're doing this in order, you've already watched the video that I shared where I kind of run you quickly through the steps. And this one I'm going to talk through like sort of how to actually use the grids in InDesign. And then there's a third one to watch that I didn't do from the Tim Harrower website. So if you go to timharrower.com, which will look like this, and you scroll down, this crash course in layout basics that's in the lower right hand corner will take you to a slideshow that I actually share with my students each year and kind of walk them through that in beginning journalism when we get to the design section. And there's some good history, and then it kind of talks about how to think through a story package. So there's I think some pretty useful stuff in there as well. And then the one that I'm going to do, and then the other piece that's in there is this fundamentals of designing a story, which you could print, use it as cheat sheet, however you want to use that. But this piece that's got kind of a standard, straightforward design of what looks like a story package that you would find on a broadsheet newspaper. So when you get to doing your own, I'm going to give you the story and the photos. All of those are in the folder for this week. And you're basically going to use those materials to put together a cool design. What I'd like you to do is think in terms of what would be most useful for you. There's 3 templates in the folder. There's one for a broadsheet, and you could design a story package on a broadsheet newspaper size. There's one for a tabloid newspaper, which you could probably use the whole thing for that, the whole page. And then there's a 2-page magazine template, and you could use that as well. So, and if you've got one that your students already use, then you certainly can feel free to use that as well. I want it to be the one that makes the most sense and is the most useful for you. This sheet is a good sort of like cheat sheet in terms of making sure that you understand how all of the pieces work together. So also might be a good one to share with your students. With the photo credit, the cut line, the headline, the byline, the story in 3 columns, a jump line, and then sort of specific information about how all of that is laid out. So that piece is in there as well. Our plan for this video is to walk through in InDesign how that piece might look. So let's see if I can quickly find where I saved stuff for our file in this folder, and then week 3, and should be the templates in there. They're in D2L. I've got the magazine one in here that I'm going to use today. And that one should look like this: 2 pages next to each other. Start page is number 2, and the right-hand page is number 3. It's an untitled document. When you open a template, it should open as untitled so that you can then save it as something else. So what I want to work through is kind of how these grids work. Okay, so basically when you're designing, everything should be designed within a grid. Okay, so you want to start, after you open the page, you want to start by actually putting some guidelines on your page. So there's a couple different places to do that. InDesign seems to have multiple ways to do everything. I'm going to go up to Layout, and then I'm going to create guides. For vertical ones, you can also go to Margins and Columns, but I want to look at vertical and horizontal, so I'm going to go to Create Guides. And here, I'm going to do 6 of each. Okay, so I'm going to change this, and actually, it's on preview mode here as checked so you can see them actually being made. So we'll do 6 horizontal, 6 rows, and then I'm also going to do 6 columns. 5, 6. Okay, I can have those go to the edge of the page as they are now if you wanted photos to bleed and still use that grid. Or if you know you're going to have a margin and nothing's going to go outside that margin, I could switch that so that they matched up to the margins instead of the page. But I'm gonna keep that on page. And then you also have a gutter here, and that's a 1 pica gutter. And I'm gonna keep that gutter at 1 pica because I want to use that to sort of ensure that all of my elements are the same distance apart. So I'm going to click OK, and I've got those guides created. The other thing that we're going to look at, and this will be a little bit further down the road, but we're going to look at creating a baseline grid to sort of make sure all our type is even as well. And I can show you where that is. If we go to View and then Grids and Guides, I want to show baseline grid. Now this view on my computer, you actually can't see it because it's zoomed too far away, but if I zoom in a couple levels, you'll see that I've got that baseline grid and I've got the regular column guides that I've set up as well. It gets a little crazy, so sometimes we don't necessarily want to put all that stuff on all at once. There are different ways to kind of work through having it on or having it off. If I hit Command semicolon is what I just did, it takes all my guidelines off the page so I can't see them anymore. And the other one that I use a lot is just going into the print preview mode, which as long as you're not in the text tool, you can go to the W. And then when I hit W, it kind of gets rid of anything that's not going to actually print on my page. So that's another thing to do as well. Okay, so baseline grid we'll get back to. Using it for copy, we're going to hide that for now so that it's not actually visible. And then let's actually kind of think through what our story is about. So you guys are going to do one on with the information that I've shared. I'm going to do a different one this time so that we're not doing the exact same thing all the way through. And I'm going to kind of put together a magazine design. And then you guys will hopefully do, not exactly the same layout, but the similar concept. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is put my first photo on here. And I'm going to go, I'm going to start in this corner here, and I'm going to go across the whole page and line it up using those guides. I'm going to let go so my picture appears there. Okay, a couple different ways to fill that. I can go to File, Place, and the shortcut for that is Command D. File, Place is here. So that's going to take me, fortunately enough, back to the same folder that I was in. These are pictures from a trip that I took to Zion National Park in Utah a couple of weeks ago, and so I figured I'd do mine on this. I like this one as sort of the opening photo. So I'm going to open that, and that's going to place into that photo, and you can see it only took a portion of the photo because the shot's actually much larger than that. And this happens quite often. There's some ways around this. So what I'm going to do, I zoomed out a level. I'm going to switch from my selection tool to the direct selection tool. Okay. One is if I'm on the selection tool, and you guys know this already, I can move things around or size them that way, but I don't really want to move it. What I want to do is manipulate the photo inside it. You can see if I click in the middle there, I get the little hand, and you can see the edges of the actual photo. It's much bigger than the box I want to put it into. So I want to size it. And again, there's a couple different ways to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hold Shift and Command, and I'm going to click in one of those outside levels. And if I just kind of pause for a second like this, and then I start to drag, you can actually see the photo as you drag it, which is more useful than just dragging it and guessing. So I'm going to kind of zoom that out. I can take as much or as little as I want, but I do want that sort of trail there. I'll zoom back in a level, sorry. And then I can also manipulate this just by using the arrow keys. If I'm on the hand tool, on the direct selection tool, I'm not moving the photo itself, I'm just moving the photo within the frame, right? So the frame stays in the same spot. So a little more of that trail at the bottom, so I'm going to zoom that up a little bit so I have that there. Okay, so I've got that to kind of work through cropping that. I'm going to put a headline on this. Okay, so I'm going to go to my text tool, draw myself a headline in roughly the right spot. It doesn't have to be perfect. I can always move it later. I'm going to type a headline. Zion hiking. An all-day experience. It's kind of lame, but sorry, I'm going on the fly here. Okay, and I Command A. I selected all of that. I'm going to use a shortcut. I can change obviously the font size is too small, 12-point Menu Pro, and I want to zoom. I want to make that bigger, and I can go this way, just slow. I can go to some of these preset ones, which is also slow. Okay. Or I can hit Shift Command on my keyboard and then the greater than arrow, not the moving arrow, but the greater than arrow takes me quickly up 2 point sizes. And I can kind of get to a point where it's, okay, that's too big. And that fits pretty well. I might go one more point size bigger just to get that to fit, but I'm also going to change the font and that'll change the spacing as well. So I've got that, and I'm going to change to a different font. What do I have that I like here? I've been using this Hagen Caps a little bit. It's a little bit stifling because it's an all caps font, but I just kind of like the look of that. And it also, I don't know, it feels like it goes with this sort of all West, Old West kind of feel that I'm going for this as well. So I've got that, and I'm going to close up this text box so it's not quite around the whole, just around the actual headline itself. And then I'm going to actually create a deck as well. So for now, I'm just going to copy and paste the headline so that I've got that text already. And I'm going to make that a smaller font size and go back down. And maybe we don't want Hagen's. I wonder how Hagen Caps Thin might look for this. Let's zoom in a little bit. Oh, and I have my grid there, and I'm going to hide the baseline grid so I don't have to see that yet. All right, that might work. You might take one day. You won't actually see it all. Go for 2. Again, kind of lame, but whatever. And a couple different places to put this, right? I could sort of like have it spread all the way across and underneath. This font is actually a little light, it seems like to me. So let's go with something a little more regular. How about this Avenir medium? All right, good for now. And I could fit that across that way, or I could just right align this. So like this. So I've got that there. That works. And again, this is just kind of a quick sample for you so that you've got some ideas in terms of where to go with that. All right, so let's put another picture on there. I'm going to do a picture here underneath. And again, I'm going to use my guidelines to kind of match that up. Command D. I'm going to find the photo I want. Again, I have to kind of scroll through them and see which ones I got. I like this little squirrel. So put him in there. Again, he's way too big. Okay, so a couple other things I can do. I'm going to just zoom out so I can see the edges of that photo. Shift Command on my keyboard to keep it proportional. And just get as much of him as I can. Let's zoom back in and see where we are. That's about as skinny as I can go with that photo, but I can push it up. So I've got him there. Okay. I need a cut line. I'm going to put a cut line on here. And let's do that. We'll fill this space here. And now, once I've filled that space, I can do this again in a few different ways. I can go to Type, and I can fill with placeholder text, which is down towards the bottom. See it down here. Or a lot of these are actually also, if I hit Control and click, it's like right-clicking if you're on a PC. So Control-click is the same as right-click. And I'm just going to fill with placeholder text, which is in that option bar that pops up. And I've got that cut line for that photo. And it's just in kind of a weird, it's not even Latin, it's kind of a fake version of Latin that they created for placeholder text. I'm going to select it, and I'm going to change it. I'm going to align it right. Okay, and that's here, align right, or Shift Command R, and that's going to align us to the right side. Okay, so that's pretty good. We've got a page done. And again, if I want to kind of see what it looks like without all of those guidelines on there, I just hit W on my keyboard, and then I've actually got what's kind of starting to look like an actual magazine design. I may want to line this up with the top of the photo, I think, so that we've got that there. And I just held Shift as I arrowed, and that'll actually move it further. So if you don't hold Shift, it'll just go one point at a time. But if I hold down Shift and I use the arrows to move things around, it'll go by a pica instead of a point. Okay. So let's do the other page. Okay, so we've got, we're going to fill in another photo here. And we'll Command D, find the photo that we're going to put in that spot. We used that one already. Let's see, do we have a skinnier one we want to use? Not the squirrel, maybe this guy. Put that photo in there. Okay, now also, instead of doing what I've been doing the first couple times, where I've gone to the direct selection tool and just zoomed in the edges of the photo, I can also control click. I have some options in fitting. Okay, so, and this is also under object at the top of your screen. So if I go to fitting and I go fit content proportionally, okay, it'll show me this version, which doesn't necessarily do me a lot of good because I've got the edges of the photo that don't necessarily go in there. Let's undo that. Let's try a different option. If we go back to fitting, how about fit content to frame? Okay, and that works, but it may have stretched the photo. Okay, and so you have to kind of double check and make sure that that's not happening as well, because if you created a frame, it's hard to tell because there's not people in it, it's just mountains, but it may have actually stretched the photo. Now I can go to links on the side here, and these are all of the 3 photos I've used so far showing up in my links. These are the specific numbers with regard to that link. If this scale here is off and it's 2 numbers, a number times a number, that means that photo has been stretched. Okay, so we want to avoid that as well. Okay, so for this one, what I'm going to do is get rid of all of those palettes. I hit Shift Tab to get rid of all those, and I'm going to Shift Command again, and I'm going to zoom that photo in for as far as I can get, and then I'm going to move it up. So I've got that photo there. Okay. All right. So we're working on it. We're getting there. I'm going to put a couple more photos on here, and actually these photos I'm going to put here in this space, and again use that. Okay, and I'm going to stack 3 photos of the same size. This layout's getting a little horizontal. I'd like to have a little more of a vertical, and I certainly could probably work that in with the squirrel there. But I'm going to copy and paste this box so that I've got 3 of those. It's another good shortcut for you. I could just hit copy paste. And if I copy and paste, but then it pops it up. It does this on purpose. It puts it in a different place in your layout so that you can see that it actually happened. Okay, I'm going to get rid of that one. I can also copy, and then there's a paste in place. And that's a weird shortcut. It's Shift Option Command V, which eventually is one you may remember, but it's a lot of keys to kind of remember all at once. Paste in place will put it directly on top. Then I can shift it down like this. Or there's even a third way to do that. Okay, I don't have to hit copy or paste at all. If I hold Option, you see how there's sort of a double arrow that pops up there. And if I hold Option and then I just drag, it copies automatically. And that's a nice quick one too. So I get that lined up there. I'm going to hold Option again because I'm going to put a third one here. Okay, and I've got those 3 photos. Okay, a little more advanced. I could actually I could place photos into all 3 of these all at once. I held my Shift key and then went to Command D or place. I could select 3 photos and plop them in all at once. I don't actually know. I have a hard time sometimes remembering which ones I've used and which ones I haven't. So I think I'll not do that. So I'll do these one at a time. So there's one. Again, it's gigantic. Let's zoom out. Shift Command, drag it in so it fits, zoom back in. I still want it smaller. Good enough for now. Second one, Command D. What have I used yet? I used that. I don't think I used that. Plop that one in there. I'll zoom out so I get the edges of the photo. You may not have this issue because your photos may not come in at such a giant size, so you may not have to do any of that. Click on the third one, Command D. The last one is this tree root thing. There's the squirrel, this one. I'll plop that in there as well. Okay. Oops, forgot to go to my hand tool. Change to the hand tool, somewhere in there. Now I'm too far out to even be able to see it. Zoom in a couple levels. There it is. And I'll make that smaller to fit. Okay. So there we go. I've got 3 photos in there that are kind of cool and adding to our Zion hiking experience. By the way, if you haven't been to Zion, definitely go. It's an amazing place. Okay, So I'm going to put some cut lines in there as well. And actually, now that I think about it, I would need one for this large picture too. So what I think I'll do, maybe I should have made that skinnier to begin with. I'm going to squish this over. And we'll put that there. And I can always reposition the photo a little bit if I wanted more of that side of the photo. I'm going to copy and paste the other cut line that I had. And I'm going to put that there. And this one I actually could go to the edge, that edge of the photo, so I knew that everything was a pica apart. I'm going to use that option click again. Get myself another one of these. I'm going to throw this one down here with these, and that would be the cut line for those, and it'd have to be a little shorter. So I've got cut lines on those, and the last thing really that I need to put on here is a story. So I'm going to go to my text tool, and I'm going to fill this whole space, I think, with story. So I'm going to go all the way across in there. Okay, I drew a text box, and it's not showing up necessarily. You can't see it, but you can see where my cursor is. And that text space has been defined. So I could fill that with placeholder text. Actually, I have a story. It's not one that I wrote, but I found a story about Zion. So I'm going to find that story and place it. It's this walking at Zion. I'm going to plop that in there. And it comes in at 12-point Minion Pro, which is not really what I want. So I'm going to change that size at least. Okay, so a couple things with text and manipulating text. You can paste text in and you can place text in. And oftentimes if you place it, it keeps some of the characteristics of the text from the Microsoft Word file or wherever it was that you got it. So oftentimes it's better to place than to paste, but both of them work. So a couple things that I need to do with this text. One is it's just too big, right? You're not going to see the story at 12. If I shift command less than arrow, I'm going to go to 10, which is better, I think. I would say 8 or 9 probably for this story is probably even better. You can't even quite see it anymore, but I'm going to go 8 on the story. And this is a long way for people to read across, right? So I'm going to probably want to put this story into columns as well. So it's selected, and I'm going to control click. And I'm going to go to text frame options. This is under object, I believe. Text frame options is here in the middle. It'll take you to the same place. And I'm going to change number of columns from 1 to 2. And that looks a little more like you would expect it to look on the page. I'm also going to put on here a drop cap. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in a little bit to the beginning of the story. And I is not the greatest letter for a drop cap to start with the story, but it's what we got. So I would hate to necessarily tell a writer to rewrite the lead of a story to sort of give me a better letter for a drop cap. But if it were me who was writing it and designing it, which is often what happens with your students, I do sometimes say, you could consider reworking the beginning of the story to get a different letter at the beginning. I'm going to change now from the A tool, the character formatting, to the paragraph formatting. So I'm up in the upper left-hand corner of the screen here. I'm going to click on that, and then to get myself a drop cap, there's a whole bunch of choices here. The one I want is this one. They give you a little diagram that looks like a drop cap, and it's at 0. And even when I change to 1, it doesn't do anything because it's one line. This is how many lines is it dropping down. Okay, so I'm going to do 2, 3, 4. You can go kind of as big as you want. Okay, but then I've got that drop cap. Okay, and I'm going to go back. I think it comes in Minion Pro, right? Because that's what the story was. In order to, and the font's not that different from this other one that I was using, but let's change that so that it's actually in Hagen caps. So now you see it's the same I, so I get some of that repetition. Okay, so I've got that story kind of working together. The other thing you notice is this doesn't come in indented. It's just kind of I'm getting rid of there. So I'm going to select the whole story. Okay, it's kind of a weird thing. If you double click on a word, it selects it. If you triple click, you get a line. If you quadruple click, you get the paragraph. If you quintuple click, you get everything in the story. But if you've got additional story that's not showing up, this story is a little too long for this package. It might not necessarily take that. So I'm going to hit Command A and select everything. And I want to indent. And so to do that, I'm going to go back to the paragraph formatting tool. And I'm looking at this first choice here, which says my indent right now on each paragraph is 0p0. I'm going to change that to 1 pica. So I'm just going to hit 1p and then enter. You see how it indents all of the lines all the way through, including, unfortunately, the first one, which you don't really want to, nor should you indent when using a drop cap. So I could have just highlighted everything except the first paragraph, but I'm going to go back and just manually take that off and go back to 0. So the first paragraph is not actually indented. Look at that. It's looking like a real page. Okay? I'm going to click back in the story and let's go through the baseline grid real quick, and then I think that'll be it, and you'll be ready to kind of work through and practice on your own. If I zoom in, remember I took it off, so I'm going to put that baseline grid back on by going to View, and then Grids and Guides, and then Show Baseline Grid. Okay, so it's nice when this is here that you can have your text sort of jump so that it's actually on it, right? So the text lines up in a really nice way. There's a way to quickly kind of manually do this. Okay, if I go to Window and then Type in Tables, and then I get my paragraph menu. Window, Type in Tables, Paragraph. Okay, I get a couple of the same attributes from the top with regard to the paragraph. Okay, you're actually going to see the ones that I'm using are here, but I wanted to show them to you in the palette as well. Right now it's not aligned to the baseline grid, so it doesn't really connect to it. Let's zoom in a little bit so you can see what happens. And then when I click on this and I align it to the baseline grid, it should kind of click. Whoops, my startup disk is almost full. It should click so that it aligns your text a little bit better. Now it did some weird things here that I don't necessarily want. So let's click again with it completely selected. Okay, and it'll line up according to the baseline grid, which is kind of what I want. Okay, now this drop cap, which is a different font, may be kind of messing with our baseline grid a little bit so that it's not necessarily where I want it. And it did kind of thicken up the leading a little bit. Okay, so some different things happening there. Okay, so let's select this again and go back to unconnected to the baseline grid. Okay, and we've got, actually, you can see some interesting weird things have been happening with the baseline grid. So we can work through that in a couple different other ways as well. Okay, so let's zoom out and let's get rid of all of these bars, and there we go. We've got, hey, it kind of looks like a magazine layout. Okay, so that's your goal. That's what we want you to do. You want to work through that. And let me know on Facebook or send me an email if you have any questions or comments. This will be due on Sunday night of next week, right? You've got a week to kind of work through putting together one story package using the materials that you'll find in our week 3 folder. Okay, hope everything's set, and